Hey folks, welcome to this tutorial on setting up a MongoDB replica set in Docker Swarm cluster. Recently, I needed to create a MongoDB service for one of our applications. Since most of our machines are already running in a Docker Swarm cluster, I expected it to be pretty convenient and easy to deploy the MongoDB directly as Docker Swarm services. However, it turned out to be pretty tricky and difficult to do so, especially when it comes to the part that you configure the replica set inside the Docker Swarm. So I think it could be a little bit helpful if I can make a tutorial on this topic. Hopefully, it will save a little bit time for those trying to do the same thing. The prerequisite for this tutorial is to have 3 machines that runs Docker in it. Those machines can be your bare metal machines or VMs that runs in one of the cloud services such as AWS or DigitalOcean. And what you need to install on these machines are your preferred Linux distribution and the Docker running on top of it. As for this tutorial, I will be using a Docker machine command that comes with the Docker installation on macOS to create 3 VMs to test with. So first, let's issue Docker machine create using driver VirtualBox, because VirtualBox is the software that I use for virtualization for on my laptop. And let's give it the VM a name, manager. And let's also copy and paste this command into the other 2 terminal windows, and let's create 2 more VMs that are named worker number 1 and worker number 2. So while this command is running, I want to clarify one thing, that we are not quite yet at the step number 1, because I'm still preparing the VMs that we want to use for the tutorial. And one thing I want to mention is those commands I will be using in this tutorial is from this URL. It's an official Docker document, and I strongly recommend you guys check this out and just know more about how to create a Swarm class and how to manage it. So let's jump back to the terminal side, and this creation of VM is about to complete. And what I want to do is to show you that Docker machine also enables one thing, that you can switch the environment context among all the VMs, because every time you want to create a Docker Swarm cluster, you wanted to choose a manager, choose a host as the Docker Swarm manager node, and start from there. You wanted to issue the command Docker Swarm init to create the Swarm cluster. So let's say now we have three VMs or 3 hosts, and I decided to use the VM that named manager as the Docker Swarm manager as well. And what I want to do is to use Docker machine command to switch the context to that machine, so I can run commands on that machine. So let's first do Docker machine and switch the environment to manager node. And there you go. Now what we run from here is actually running inside the manager node. That's where we want to issue the Docker Swarm init command line. And but it gives us an error because the VM has 2 network interfaces. You have to specify which one you want to use to, for other nodes to communicate with the manager nodes. And let's just copy this option, and let's do the same command but with this option, and specify the actual IP address of the manager node. All right, and this command yields another command that can be used for other workers, other hosts that to join the Swarm cluster as a worker node. Let's copy this command And let's jump to this right terminal on the right side. And what we want to do is still to switch the environment context to the worker number 1 node VM, and let's run that command. And that means this VM has already joined the swarm as a worker node. And same thing here. What we want to do is evaluate the environment variables and switch the context to work number 2, and let's run that command as well. And now we already have gotten a Docker Swarm cluster that has 3 nodes in it. And what we can do is to use Docker node list to show all the VMs, all the nodes that we have in the cluster. But again, I want to emphasize that Docker node list command can only be issued on a manager node. So basically, what we want to, if we do it here, it will give us an error because the node is not a swarm manager. So remember here on this upper left terminal window, we switched our context, environment context to the manager node. That's why we can run Docker Docker node list command. So all right. Now we already have this 3-node Docker Swarm cluster. Next up, let's move to step number 2, which is to create the Docker configuration and also a compose file that we will be using to run the Docker, the MongoDB services.